hard being black. I'm tired, okay? Black men and black women, black men and black women. Someone left a comment on a video that I was in that said, why is it that every time a black woman opens their mouth, I feel better about being single? And you know, normally I would just ignore ignorance, but I had time that day. My response was, consolation prize. I know, I was feeling a little bit spicy. He responds and says, point proven. That may seem like a very basic interaction, but I sat back and I reflected on the dynamic of that situation, and I realized that it alluded to a much bigger problem. Let's talk about bias. A bias is a tendency, inclination, or prejudice toward or against something or someone. Some biases are positive and helpful, but biases are often based on stereotypes rather than actual knowledge of an individual or circumstance. There are two types of biases that I see on the internet a lot. The first one is confirmation bias. With confirmation bias, you're basically going out and seeking information that supports what your prejudices or your beliefs are without taking information into account that might prove your prejudice or your belief to be untrue. One of the most popular forms of confirmation bias that I see is when men and women both seek out content that supports their negative stereotypes of the opposite sex. For example, women who feel like all men are misogynistic and therefore they go and seek out people on social media or content creators, a lot of podcasters who have viewpoints to support this belief that men hate women.
If you're in a serious relationship with a girl, she should not have an Instagram. That's cheating.
What to do if you have a girl at your place and she says, no, I don't want to have sex?
Who gives a fuck about a woman's orgasm? It's useless. And when women lose sexual leverage, guess what? They have no power because that's their only fucking power.
And on the flip side, I see this a lot with men and how they view modern women. Insert your negative stereotype here. A lot of men, especially a lot of content creators, will go and seek out clips of women saying asinine things to prove their point.
Women, sleep with who you want to sleep with. Do it however much you want to.
If he goes on vacation with his boys, I am cheating.
I think women should stop sleeping with men, to be honest.
Like many women, I didn't need a man to buy my house, to buy my car, or keep my lights on. We don't need you guys.
While completely ignoring the other women or even women content creators that might paint a different picture. But I want to talk about perception bias because this is what played a role in my little disagreements. Perception bias happens when we already have a viewpoint or a stereotype, often a negative one, against a person or a group of people, and that impacts the way that we interact with that person or that group of people. Now, typically when you see someone in a negative way, you're more likely to have a negative interaction with them. But the caveat to that is that when we do have a negative interaction, we're more likely to blame that on the person or the group of people that we stereotyped in the first place, instead of thinking to ourselves, maybe I'm having a negative interaction with someone because of my negative viewpoints of them. Let me break it down for y'all. This man came into the conversation of black women speaking and already had the viewpoint that whenever a black woman speaks, it makes me feel better about being single. Because he already had that negative viewpoint, he made an offensive comment. I, as a black woman, saw that comment and I responded in a way that we can agree wasn't really positive. Slight sarcasm, but not really positive. And when he responded and said point proven, in his head, that reinforced the reason why he doesn't really mess with black women in the first place. But he didn't take into consideration that the reason why that interaction happened the way that it did is because he approached the discussion with a negative viewpoint. So I do want to add that after we had this exchange, I did let him know that the reason why I responded the way that I did is because he came sideways in the first place, and I let him know that I was open to productive conversation. He did delete his comment, so we didn't get to engage, but I think that that was a learning moment for me because while this is true, perception bias is real, I do think that it's important to call people out on it in that moment so that they can be aware that they are doing it, because most times it does happen subconsciously. This is important because this is literally what I see happen between black men and black women every single day. We come into interactions with one another and we have these negative stereotypes that causes us to be on guard with one another. And instead of looking at each other and seeing each other as a reflection of ourselves, we're seeing each other as enemies. I just want everyone to be more aware of the way that we say things, how we view one another, because that is largely shaping the way that other people are receiving and in turn will respond to us. And I know, you guys often tell me to block out the noise and that I care a little bit too much. But the thing is, I wouldn't have to care so much if you guys cared enough. This reminds me of when I was in my early 20s and I was having a conversation with my mom because I was going to protest. This is when Black Lives Matter was at its peak. And I was just really charged about a lot of the racial tensions that we were seeing. And I ended up getting arrested that night for protesting. My mom is like, Tynesha, I really just don't understand. Why do you put yourself in these situations? And I remember bawling to my mom and I'm like, I can't help it. This is what I was meant to do. I felt like this is what my spirit had called me to do. There was this inner burning inside, and I just can't be a person who sits quiet from the sidelines and not speak my mind and not speak out against all the BS that I see, because it matters to me. You know, sometimes I look at this and I'm like, is it all for nothing? You know, are we ever going to make the progress that I want to see? This frequency that we're vibrating on right now is super low. I just want to give love and be love. And this is why I love being able to connect with other people who are positive in my comments. Other creators who have really good energy. Force people to think about the way that they think and are overall just pure good people. And I know that won't be the reality for all black people, but I want it to be the reality for more black people. And maybe that's a pipe dream. It's hard being black. I'm tired, okay? I just want people to look at me and see me as a sister, see me as someone who they show love to just off the strength that we are a unit, we're a community, we function together, we understand that we're facing a lot of the same systematic oppressions, that many of us are not responsible for this rut that we're in right now. And I just don't see it. We often do this thing to ourselves where we complain about the darkness without realizing that we may be the cloud that's blocking the sunlight. Don't practice what you don't want to become.